There was things like not being able to use the toilet in the house was kind
So
of...
she wouldn't let you use the toilet in the house?
No. So she basically said, now you're living with me, you're the man, you are the earner, so it's your duty to give me money and for me to have control over that money. But I was always told, well, if you try to leave, I will go to the police and I will say that you tried to, assault me or even worse.
What you just saw is only a glimpse of the nightmare this man endured at the hands of his ex-girlfriends. And the worst part, he couldn't just walk away. She had him trapped in a twisted web of control and abuse. Police described it as one of the worst cases of controlling and coercive behavior they'd ever seen. On top of that, the legal system failed him while he was being tormented in unbelievable ways, like being forced to drink mouthwash. Before we dive in, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future deep dives like this. And if you think these stories need more attention, drop a like and share your thoughts in the comments. It really helps. Now let's get into it. So, who are Sarah Rigby and Gareth Jones, and what led to this horrible situation? Gareth lived in Crewe, England. He was a project manager for the National Health Service, and he used to play rugby earlier in his life. Previously, he was in a 2.5-year relationship which ended in 2021. So, he wanted to get back to the dating scene with the hopes of finding a relationship and starting a family. He went on a dating website called Plenty of Fish, where he met Sarah Rigby in June of 2021 as they began texting and talking to each other. Sarah was a student nurse at the time. She told Gareth that she was 33 years old, but in reality, she was actually 39. She lived in a flat bedroom house about 10 miles away from Gareth and told him that she owned the property, but it was actually her father's. The lies didn't stop there. Prior to meeting Gareth, she already had 6 children, and Gareth was aware of this. However, she never told him that the children were from more than one father. Sarah was intensely affectionate with him through texts and phone calls. She seemed over the moon about meeting Gareth and about the idea of dating him. They went to a restaurant on their first date and had a really good time, so they went on a second date in which they had sex and made things official shortly after. About a month into the relationship, Gareth visited Sarah at her house one day. They had an argument, but Sarah took things a bit further as she kicked him out while he was in his underwear. Gareth thought to himself the relationship was probably finished at that point, but Sarah reached out saying, "Look, sometimes I have mood swings and maybe I made a mistake. Let's try and work things out." The couple made up and stayed together. However, Sarah was becoming more and more abusive, demanding and controlling over the next several months, from cutting him off from friends and family to not letting him use the bathroom or shower. In October of 2021, the couple took a trip to London. While they were in a department store, Sarah told Gareth that they were not leaving the store until he bought her something expensive. She then grabbed his arm and sunk her nails into his skin until he bled. She told him if he didn't buy her the bag she wanted, she would go back on the app and see who's in the vicinity, saying, "I'm sure there are plenty of men who would like to have me around this evening." Gareth ended up buying her a bag for £400 and a dress for £600. Together, those total about $1,300 American. Sarah was happy with this and told him that she definitely loved him and that he really showed her that he was the one by buying her those things. This is part of how she would manipulate and coerce him. Sarah later invited Gareth to move in with her. Once he moved in, she started making very strict and extreme rules. If he didn't comply with her orders, Sarah would punish him by physically assaulting him, forcing him to starve, and making him sleep on the floor with no blanket and the windows left open. She demanded £700 a month in rent and told him he had to keep his personal belongings in the garage. He wasn't allowed to have his own key and wasn't allowed to stay in the house alone. Whenever Sarah left, he would have to leave too. This was very hard because his job often required that he work from home. But Sarah wouldn't let him be at the house, so he was forced to go to libraries or coffee shops to work, or just to have a shelter over his head, despite the fact he was paying full rent. Obviously, he wasn't happy about this, so why did he stay?
But I was always told, well, if you try to leave, I will go to the police and I will say that you tried to, assault me or even worse. And it was who do you think the police are going to believe? Are they going to believe, you know, little old me or big old you? And I think, and that is the stigmatism that is out there in society.
She knew that society and the police would just blindly believe her, and this allowed her to force Gareth to stay in this abusive relationship. This is a relatively common tactic that female abusers will often use. They know that false accusations aren't just threats, as numerous men have had their lives destroyed by them. Jordan Tengrove, for example, is an innocent man who suffers from complex PTSD resulting from a false allegation and attempted to off himself. Anyway, Sarah cut Gareth off from his family and friends and would force him to hand over all of his paychecks. She was unhappy with Gareth's body weight, and so she restricted him to only eating salad and fruits. He ended up losing 56 pounds from being forcibly malnourished, but Sarah still wasn't happy, and she was still abusive about his appearance. She would regularly check his cell phone, took his email password, and wouldn't let him have personal conversations with others unless she was there. Sarah was isolating him from his loved ones, would spy on him, and control his every move. He even resorted to giving his own mother a duress code to indicate whether it was safe for them to speak without Sarah listening in. Sarah would accuse him of having bad breath and forced him to swallow toothpaste and mouthwash. She didn't like that he experienced some hair loss, so she tried to push him into getting a hair transplant and would make him wear a hat in public. She would berate him by calling him ugly, fat, disgusting, or a whale. She kicked, bit, and scratched him. She had also once hit him in the face with a glass candle holder, leaving a scar on his nose. Since he wasn't allowed to use the bathroom at the house, he would have to go to public gyms or businesses if he wanted to use a bathroom or shower. Sarah had a very high sex drive and would demand sex from him 5 to 6 times a day. Whenever she felt he didn't perform adequately, she would make him sleep on the floor with no blankets and with the window open. Gareth was systematically thrown out of the house. His mum would offer to cook him food, but he was so nervous about eating anything that might have onion or garlic in it that he wouldn't eat, because Sarah would make him drink mouthwash afterwards. She also wanted another baby and would tell him, if I'm not pregnant this month, I'm going to find someone else to have sex with and get pregnant. I need to get pregnant this month. If I don't, I'll dump you. Gareth felt a lot of pressure to stay in the relationship. Sarah would blame him for her bad behavior and wear him down until he apologized. She would then threaten to reveal his apologies to the police as proof that he did something wrong. If Gareth ever attempted to leave the relationship, Sarah threatened to destroy his property and accuse him of assault. Gareth said he was driven to the brink of offing himself. Now, this is where it all started to really shift, as things were getting really bad. One day, Gareth's mom wanted to see him, but he had to arrange to meet with his mom in secret because there was no way his abusive girlfriend was going to let that fly. He knew Sarah had an appointment coming up, so Gareth had to use that time to secretly meet with his mom for coffee. During their meeting, Gareth's mom saw a message pop up on his phone. It was Sarah, asking if he had taken a pack of potato chips from the house. He responded saying he just wanted to have a snack while he was working. Sarah replied with nasty texts, curse words, and blatant abuse, telling him he's definitely not going to eat for a very long time, even though he was already barely allowed to eat a salad or anything like that. When Garrett's mom saw that, she instantly broke down in tears. It broke her heart to see her kind son be treated so horribly. That's when Gareth had the realization that he can't put his family through this. He didn't want his parents to suffer from knowing the torture he was faced with. He made a call to Mankind, a non-profit which helps male victims of domestic violence. They confirmed to him that they've seen cases with these kinds of warning signs of very serious abuse. Gareth knew if he didn't take drastic measures to get out now, he would be falsely accused for horrible crimes he never committed, like SA. After being in this horrible relationship for about 9 months, Gareth finally got out. He didn't have much money due to the financial abuse, and he couldn't afford a place on his own, but at least he got away from Sarah. After reporting the abusive relationship to the police, Sarah was placed under arrest. She then did exactly what she said she was going to do. She falsely accused Gareth of being coercive, controlling, manipulative, and violent, basically all the things that she was doing to him. The police decided to just believe her and arrested Gareth without a proper investigation. After about 6 months, the charges against Gareth were dropped. The case against Sarah then went forward and her trial started on February 26, 2024. Gareth wasn't the only one to testify against her, as two of Sarah's previous partners were willing to come forward and share their experiences with Sarah. On February 28th, 2 days after the start of the trial, Sarah pleaded guilty to controlling and coercive behavior. He was then sentenced to 20 months in jail, but the sentence was suspended, which means she could avoid jail completely. She would just have to do 35 hours of rehabilitation and cannot have contact with Gareth for 5 years. Many people say this result was unacceptable. She committed serious physical, psychological, and financial abuse, and she didn't have to serve any time in jail for it. Detective Constable Sophie Ward from Cheshire Police said, "This is the worst case of controlling and coercive behavior I have ever seen. Rigby had a stranglehold on the victim. Through her coercive behavior, she was able to control everything he did, cutting him off from everyone he knew and leaving him trapped, feeling like he had nowhere to turn." Gareth said this, "I feel disappointed with the verdict. If it was a man committing the crime, it probably would have been a completely different outcome." It shows that it doesn't send a strong enough message. It shows that if you're a female abuser and you did commit such atrocities, you can still get away with these things. This is a huge part of the reason men often don't report DV, domestic violence. Even though 50% of DV is committed by women, female abusers will often threaten to play the victim and put the man in jail, and if they are caught, they often don't face any serious consequences. Even after she had been charged, Sarah continued to taunt Gareth, refusing to return his belongings and constantly delaying the trial by failing to notify the court of holidays and appointments. She showed no remorse for what she did and got away with it without any real consequences. After this ordeal, Sarah went on to find a new lover and became pregnant. Here are my thoughts and opinions on the case. At the beginning, Sarah was love-bombing Gareth, showing intense love and affection for him. She would express a strong interest in having a long-term, serious romance with him and raising a family together, which can be very alluring. Sarah was dishonest from the start, lying about her age, owning her father's property, and didn't tell Gareth that her 6 kids were from multiple fathers. These were red flags, although Gareth might not have known any of this until after the relationship ended. She would love bomb him and show huge interest in him. This built an emotional connection and attachment which she used to take advantage of him. To me, it seems like this was her form of manipulation and coercion. She knew Gareth was a good person and recognized that she could exploit his kind, gentle nature for her own selfish gain. Her manipulating him into buying her an expensive purse and dress during their trip to London was a red flag to me. And I understand that it's hard to know what's going on when you're being manipulated and love-bombed like this. Naturally, Gareth would want the relationship to work out and would tolerate her poor behavior in the name of love, believing that he would have to make certain compromises for their relationship. At the beginning, she wasn't committing any super drastic abuse because she was still kind of luring him in. Once she got him to move in with her, that started to change because she then had control over his physical environment and much of his life. She knew everything that was going on in his life and threatened to falsely accuse him of SA, so he was trapped. At that point, he had no choice but to hand over his email passwords, control to his finances, and access to his phone. Meanwhile, Sarah would constantly berate him and attack his self-esteem, making him feel like he was hopeless and that he was lucky to have this relationship with Sarah. She made him feel like no one else would ever want to be with him, so that he wouldn't have any options to leave. If someone you care about is constantly telling you that you're fat, ugly, a disgusting whale, Naturally, you would feel like this relationship is your last hope. And if it ends, you'll be alone for the rest of your life. Gareth has been receiving psychological counseling even 2 years after their relationship ended, and he may still be in counseling now. She was breaking down his self-esteem so that he would continually become more tolerant of her abuse. The threat of being falsely accused of SA meant that she could destroy Garrett's life at any moment. This must have loomed over his head all the time. Meanwhile, she was digging him into a hole that would become too deep for him to escape, all while cutting him off from his friends and family. I want to point out this wasn't Garrett's fault. When you're in a situation where someone threatens you with a false accusation like this, you are trapped in an extremely difficult situation. It's not just a matter of going to the police, because they might just blindly believe the woman. That's what happened to Gareth, and he was sent to jail after she made false claims. Sarah knew perfectly well how detrimental these kinds of allegations can be, and knew that the legal system would favor her over Gareth. Even after being convicted, she was let off easily. That's not what would happen if the roles were reversed. Ultimately, I think Sarah is an extremely cruel person with psychopathic traits. I say this because she showed no empathy or remorse for what she did, and was very calculated in her manipulation and methods of trapping Gareth. She showed no genuine care for him and was very narcissistic. She is immensely self-centered and felt entitled to everything she was taking from Gareth. Meanwhile, she had no issue with depriving him of food or a bed and blankets on cold nights. Destroying him and his self-esteem allowed her to have expensive gifts and control over his life, and she was perfectly happy with that. She has demonstrated this kind of behavior with previous partners as well, so has a pattern of abusing the men that she dates. I think Gareth is a good man who was put through tragic circumstances and experienced significant flaws in the legal system. He managed to save crucial messages that proved his case, despite the fact that Sarah had access to his phone. This was very well done on his end, because it likely would have been the make or break factor in his case. He contacted a DV, domestic violence organization called Mankind, that helps male victims, and I'm glad he contacted them. Gareth also dodged a bullet by not getting Sarah pregnant, because that would have made everything a lot worse and might have allowed her to have control over his life again. I don't believe justice was served. She starved him, controlled his life, forced him to drink mouthwash, abused him psychologically, financially, and physically for many months, and still avoided a jail sentence. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about the case. Is this a big issue in the legal system, and are we failing victims like Gareth? Please share your thoughts and stories, and let's spread awareness. If you found value in this video, subscribe and leave a comment, and let's get the conversation going. I'll see you in the next one.